Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Wednesday, May 31st. It is the last day of May, and we are here to talk about recruiting. Recruiting is picking up, Jamie. Official visits start this weekend, and there's going to be the first of three big weekends. I think it's three. Yeah, three big weekends, maybe four, right? You never know if players are going to be added to the official visit list later in the month. But we're going to talk about the first weekend, a bunch of players coming in, very important targets on the offensive line, at safety, running back. There's a lot to talk about there. We're also going to talk about our favorite wins as, Notre Dame, I guess, football fans, right? Like previous to working on the Notre Dame beat, what are our favorite wins and that sort of thing, favorite games watching, we talked about our worst losses last week, Jamie, and it was nice to relive those horror stories.
I don't know if it was nice would be the word I would use.
It's always good to reminisce about how your heart was broken, Jamie, because then you can look forward to the better days ahead. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We reached 6,000 subscribers. Thank you, everyone who has subscribed to the show, everyone who continues to support the show. Jason Smith, Ray Jean is here again. Joseph Steining. Hey, guys, good morning. Thank you for being here. Patrick Quinlan says 87 days to Notre Dame football. I can't wait. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to put this up. 80s, can't wait. Happy to have Jamie and Greg talk ball while I go on a leisurely walk on a beautiful day. Go Irish. That's what I'm talking about, Patrick. Go on a leisurely walk and enjoy listening to see that. Yeah, Jay says, nice seeing Caleb Beasley taking an official visit for the OSU game. That is nice to see, Jamie. You got to think there's going to be movement there, given Notre Dame's stance on hosting committed prospects on official visits. Maybe he won't be an official prospect by the time he gets to South Bend against Ohio State. So we'll just have to stay tuned for that. But first, we're going to talk about ESQ clothing, Jamie. We're going to talk about the nice bamboo shirts that Ga Wang is putting out for the people. He's getting his fabric from Italy, Jamie, from Italy, from Europe. Anytime you get the European fabrics, Jamie, the bamboo, it's legit. It's really good quality. It's the world's first bamboo shirt. Marcus Freeman's wearing it all over the country. We're wearing it when we go out. People are making comments, Jamie. They're looking, they're noticing. It feels good to be wearing quality fabric. And who's not wearing the quality ESQ shirts, Jamie? You know who's not?
No, who?
None of our rivals, Jamie. None of the rivals wear the ESQ clothing.
I was going to guess Jim Harbaugh, but yeah,
he's not wearing that.
He's not wearing
it. Ga has not.
I don't think he's worn a dress shirt in years. Yeah,
no, Ga has not made a bamboo khaki pant yet, and so therefore Jim Harbaugh is not going to be involved in that. So look, none of the rivals wear it. Notre Dame wears it. It's the official outfitter of Notre Dame football. So head over to ESQclothing.com. Upgrade your shirt game, guys. Everyone. European bamboo, Ray Jean says. Jason Smith says it's exotic. Go ahead.
I got actually a weird anecdote about Jim Harbaugh and his clothing.
Okay.
So my cousin previously was on the 49ers, worked for the San Francisco 49ers. He was the head strength conditioning coach when Jim Harbaugh was the coach there. So he obviously worked with Harbaugh for many years. And so Jim Harbaugh, obviously everybody, Mr. Khaki, everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah.
He dressed similarly for years and years. So he actually, they're very strict in the NFL in terms of what you can wear. And you're supposed to wear team issued gear, and you're supposed to wear of the brands that are NFL brands, right? The sponsors of the NFL, like that's a very thing. But, Jim Harbaugh, I mean, I don't want to diagnose Jim Harbaugh, but he's an eccentric guy. He's got some quirks. And one of his quirks was he had to where he didn't want to wear whatever the Niners were going to give him. So they had to alter his black Stanford sweatshirt and turn that into a 49er with a 49ers symbol. So he wore the same sweatshirt that he wore at Stanford the entire time when he was with the 49ers. And I'm sure when he got to Michigan, he had to, because, you know, the colors changed and stuff. So I'm sure he had to do that. But he wore the same thing that he wore with Stanford because he just didn't want to. He didn't want to change. And so he just was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what he was. And no one was going to refuse him. So that's
he likes what he likes, Jamie. You know,
he's his own guy.
He likes his pants. He likes his specific sweatshirt, and he likes steak and whole milk. I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah. You know,
chicken is a nervous bird. He's just
nervous bird. I think you know, what's funny about that is he might be a little nervous bird, given the fact that he can't wear a different sweater.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Great. So he's not wearing. Needless to say, he's not wearing European bamboo, Jamie. And you can go to esqclothing.com. Upgrade your shirt game, everybody. Okay, Jamie, what's your favorite win from or one of your favorite wins from the last, I don't know, since you've been following Notre Dame football?
Wow, you know, I was thinking about this as we were just talking about it earlier, and I think one thing that's certain is the losses stick with you more than the wins.
Okay, I have a theory about that, why that is. So the losses, the wins, right? So Notre Dame hasn't won a national title official since 1988, right?
Yeah.
So all the wins after that, they're great. There's wins in the moment, but they're not defining. The losses are defining every single time. They always define the season because that's what essentially ends the season. But the wins don't. The wins always are in hindsight kind of diminished because there's a loss later, you know, and that's why. Because you know, the thread that we put on the message board, it's like there's 140 responses to the you know, the loss thread, and the win thread was like, I don't know, 50, 60, right? Because it just doesn't, you know, it doesn't stick. They always get diminished by something later. So
so I mean, with that in mind, I mean, and also too, okay, so my story of when I became a Notre Dame fan was when I was 12 years old. I became a Notre Dame fan. So it was actually during the 1993 season, which was obviously is a pretty magical year for everyone who was alive and followed Notre Dame football then. You know, cheated out of a national championship. I think everyone would agree. Give me a break. Bobby Bowden just got it because of that. That just shows you how stupid a vote is for a thing, because they were like, he hasn't had one. Let's give it to him, even though they lost to Notre Dame. Like, give me a break.
No good.
And I think most people would expect me to say that Florida State game, but you know what? I was at that time, you know, I was playing a lot of sports. So I played a lot of sports on Saturdays. So I didn't get to see
it.
Everyone. So that was when I taped the game and watched it after. But I did see the 1993 Notre Dame Michigan game, Notre Dame going on the road to play Michigan. Notre Dame was not favored in that game. They were underdog. I believe Michigan was like the third or fourth ranked in the country. You know, expected to win the game. And I vividly remember the beginning of the game. It was on ABC. Might have been a Brent. I don't know if it was a Keith Jackson game.
It was definitely Keith Jackson, 100%.
So it was Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy calling the game. And at the beginning of the game, they had just this little intro, and I miss that they do these kind of like old things like this. They had a little intro where they had a guy from the Notre Dame band playing on his like trumpet or whatever horn. I don't know. Well, I'm not a music expert, but he's playing the Notre Dame fight song on his thing, and then it like kind of faded into all these like little Notre Dame highlights, and then they had a Michigan guy doing "Hail to the Victors." And there was just something kind of like majestic about it, something kind of special about college football. And I was just so hooked in at that moment. And then I remember that Kevin McDougal, I believe, was a 43-yard run, touchdown run on a lead option play to the left. Derek Mays blocking for him down the field and scored a touchdown, went up early in the game. And that honestly, I don't even really remember. Like, I'm reading about the game now. I don't even remember. Like, apparently Mark Edwards fumbled at the 1 yard line. I'm like, I don't remember that. I only remembered the good stuff from the game, really, right? So I only remembered that, and that Notre Dame won the game. And obviously it was like 27-24 or whatever it was. But that was stuck with me because it was such a huge monumental game at the time, and it was considered an upset, and it was on the road. And yeah, so it was just one of those things where in the moment too, it was such a big deal. And obviously that kind of ignited their whole season, where they ended up obviously beating Florida State later on. And, they had the disappointment at Boston College, but they had just a terrific season, deserved to win the national championship, got cheated out of it. And then really, honestly, a lot of the more memorable games for me are like the kind of close losses, like the Bush push, the Nebraska. I can't remember if it was 2000 or 2001.
2000.
2000, which obviously had the Julius Jones return and the Joey Gethrell return, because that was a game that like Notre Dame was given no shot, and Nebraska was ranked number 1, and they had Eric Crouch and all that kind of stuff. But those games kind of stick out more, and then the rest of the things, it's all like just moments, where you're like Arnaz Battle taking that little slip screen to the house against Michigan State with Pat Dillingham, right? Like just things like that. And I mean, and then it's weird because when you're doing when you're covering the team and you're doing stuff for ISD, and you aren't really a fan anymore. It's not like a thing. Like not that I wasn't excited that Notre Dame beat like Clemson in 2020. That was a huge win, but it was like more of like the significance of that. And then also like you get into it because you're like, oh man, the message board is going to be happy.
Yeah.
Like it's like one of those kind of things. It's one of those reactions. So yeah. And it's just a totally different feeling. And whatever, when I'm not doing this one day, then it'll change again, I guess, I'm sure. But yeah, that 1993 Michigan Notre Dame game, that one just it's kind of like the first one for me, and it's maybe because it's the first one, it's kind of the best one.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of forget too, like McDougal going into that game, like so when Notre Dame during COVID, when they published all the home games, there was nothing on, so I watched like every 93 home game, right? And there's things you forget, like I forgot that McDougal was benched in the Northwestern game, the opening game of the season. They benched him for poor play. Like it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna do, like they didn't plan on rotating quarterbacks. He wasn't doing well, so he put in Paul Fela, right, for a couple series, and that didn't go well either. So like that kind of gets lost. And so you go in to play Michigan on the road, and it's like they've got Todd Collins, Tyrone Wheatley, someone put in the chat, Amani Toomer, Mercury Hayes, those guys, like those are legit dudes. And it's like, how's this going to go? And they got, and Lou, like his greatest quality was he could get these guys up for these games. They were always ready. They would lose a stupid game, right? They would always lose a dumb one. And that's what cost them, right? In 90, they lost to Stanford. In 92, they lost to Stanford. 90, they lost to Penn State as well. Like there were just so many dumb losses that cost them national titles. But in the big ones, he had them ready to go. And they jumped out 17-3 lead. And they hung in there at the end. It's 27-23. So that was a big one. I remember too. So on the board, I was just kind of throwing off like in 2017 when they beat USC, just because living out here, I had gone to a game watch that was kind of far away. It was like 50 minutes from our house. So the way that Notre Dame just pummeled them. That was unexpected. Did not expect a 35-point victory or whatever it was, and then being able to drive home and putting on LA sports radio on the whole drive. I mean, that was fantastic, right? Like, it just, listen to these people, just like could not believe what just happened. That was a good time. I think 2020 is kind of special because of the COVID aspect of it. Just like, it was such a hard year, like everything in the news, like everything you were hearing, like it was all bleak, right? It was illness, deaths, and people are sick, and it wasn't a good time,
Yeah.
And so for them to come through in that situation, like that was really big. But one game that stuck out to me that I had forgotten about, but then I was like, oh yeah, like this was awesome, was 98 Michigan, because they were defending national champions. They came in, Jarius Jackson. It was his first year starting quarterback, and Tom Brady's the quarterback for them. And it's just like, I mean, obviously you didn't know who he was, but it's like, it's they're defending champs. And Notre Dame they're doing real poorly in the first half. But they keep holding them field goals. And then it was like, I don't know, 16-3 at halftime or something like that. And then Notre Dame just like, it's turnover after turnover after turnover. And they capitalize. And suddenly they're up. I think it was 36-13 or 36-16 or whatever it was. And it was like, whoa, like now we're blowing them out. And like everything, and just the fact that like everything kept snowballing, it was like, that was really big. I was a senior in high school at the time. So I remember watching that. We watched the game, and then we had our little, what was called our green and gold game. So our little scrimmage before the season started. That was really a good time. So those are some of my favorite wins right there. Just like 17, 2020, and then 98 Michigan. That was a really, really good time.
Patrick mentioned in there too that we should probably give a shout out to that Michigan State 06 game, because that game, obviously that was the Terrell Lambert game.
Yeah.
And it was obviously a miserable game, a miserable day. And just that was easily the most epic comeback that I can remember. Like, just how they came back in that game. And it was pretty special. Like that was really cool. And I just remember too, because where I grew up in Vancouver, BC, there wasn't a ton of Notre Dame fans out there. And one of my friends, who I'm still good buddies with today, he was also a Notre Dame fan. And we happened to be together. We were playing it was like a poker night. We were playing poker at our friend's house. So we had the game on kind of in the background while we were also playing poker. And I just remember, like, God, thank God we're playing poker, because the game was going terrible. It was going so bad. And then I just remember like the total like mood change as that game was going on. And then it turned out too, like, just, everything was coming up Millhouse for me that night, because I ended up winning like a ton of money. And then I was like on fire. And then one of my good buddies was like, we're going to the casino. Like, let's go. And then we went to casino, and I won more money. And it was, oh God, so that was just a doubly memorable night for me there too. And either just like one other thing too on Jarius Jackson, which was just like very weird. So Jarius Jackson actually played for the BC Lions in CFL. I think he still might be coaching the CFL right now. I'm not sure. But anyway, so he was playing, and he had played in the CFL for a number of years. And one of my best friends growing up, Lisa, her husband was a linebacker for the BC Lions, and he was good buddies with Jarius. And it was just so weird. Like, one night we all like went out, and we were at this like lounge having drinks, and then just like sitting there was Jarius Jackson. And I was like, this is surreal. Like, I just because he was a guy as when I was in high school, and then getting together with all my buddies, we would play NCAA football. And I was like, I've played,
You were my quarterback.
Jarius Jackson. I've played with Jarius Jackson as my quarterback in NCAA football numerous times, right? So it was just funny. And anyways, he's a really good guy too. So
yeah, he was he was fun. I mean, he was kind of a mess though. Like, speaking of watching games back, like you forget like how chaotic that 98 team was specifically. Like, it was such chaos, but he was like, that's how he operated best in that kind of chaotic atmosphere. So he was a fun one. He was a fun one to root for.
Another guy, if he was in this era, would have he'd kill it in this era, because the offenses hadn't evolved to where they are now. And if he was like in a spread option offense, I mean, he would just be tearing it up. He'd be a Heisman contender.
Yeah, he was really good. Almost like a better passing Wimbush, probably. I don't think he was that fast, but he had those wheels, man. Like he had some long runs.
And he had some, like, a little bit of, because he was big too, so he just had a little bit of that physicality. He was like kind of built to be like a designed run type of guy. Out of a spread set, he would have been dangerous.
Yeah. All right. So that was fun. No, come on, Eric Ward. 93 was not our last good year. Come on. That Notre Dame's had some really good years since then. Come on. It wasn't our last good year. Okay. Let's talk about recruiting, Jamie. This is the big weekend coming up in June. Okay, so a big month coming up in June. At the end of the month, we are going to know pretty much where this class is headed. For the most part. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of I think there'll be a lot of commitments. I mean, they have 16 now. Is that
16,
correct?
Yeah,
16. So they have 16 now. I think you'll see at least 5 or 6 coming out of the month of June. And once you get into the low to mid 20s, that's when it's like, okay, things have really started to solidify. So this is a big month for Notre Dame recruiting. And it starts this weekend, Jamie. Let's start on the offensive line, because Peter Jones and Anthony Knapp. Let's start with them. They're coming in. They're already committed, right? And it looks like they're going to be solid in the class, right? So there's 2 guys. Do you see? So Peter Jones, I think, is known as a guard. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think he's going to play guard.
Okay, so Anthony Knapp it could play tackle, we think, but I think most likely a guard, just generally speaking. He could play tackle, but I think they like him at guard.
Well, he said, I mean, there's an interview today where a friend of the site who works for a Georgia site had got a chance to talk with him, and he said Joe Rudolph had talked to him about left tackle. So,
interesting.
Yes,
I haven't seen that.
I do think he's like kind of a swing guy. It's gonna depend, but I do think if he's long enough and feet wise, like I think he could play. I think he could play tackle. Like he's to me, he's in the kind of like the Hainsey-ish mode where you're like feet to play tackle, maybe best suited to play inside, but feet to play tackle.
Yeah. You're famously, maybe I shouldn't say famously, but you're higher on Anthony Knapp than I think most people are. I think that's interesting, right? And that, so I take that in a heavy consideration there. Jason Smith asking about Gary B. Lambert's date. So right now we're going to talk about Styles Prescott and Gary B. Lambert. Prescott is locked in terms of like he will be there this weekend. But Gary B. Lambert there was questions about whether he's going to be at Notre Dame or whether he's going to be somewhere else. Do we know? You and Matt talked about that yesterday. Do we know if that's squared away? Like, we know he's going to be on campus this weekend.
I mean,
as far as you know,
as far as I know, and Matt is obviously someone who knows and is very plugged in, and Matt informed me that he was going to be there. So, I mean, I guess things change. I did read something like literally yesterday with previewing an Ohio State visit thing where his name was on there. So, but I think it's whatever. So it's obviously conflicting reports, but I think Notre Dame expects him to be there. So I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't show up this week, take him off the board. He's not coming. Like he's just
because this would be, I think, numerous times there's been kind of a date and then it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, and then the other it's one thing to be like, oh, it didn't happen because something came up and whatever, right? Like, but it's another thing if like he was like, oh no, he's going to Ohio State. It's like, well, okay, then I guess that's that, you know,
it's
right?
not good. That's not good, right? Like,
no,
I couldn't make it. Yeah.
I mean, I think whatever, right? And I don't think, and as mentioned numerous times, I think everybody's unsure about the status of what he wants, where he wants to go. It's a little bit like his teammate, right? His high school teammate, Boubacar Traore, where there was like kind of like a lot of mystery around him too. And obviously it's also one thing though, where it'd be different if it's always one of these things where if you're like, man, I'm trying to get out to Notre Dame. And then there are these guys who go on like all these other visits, but he's not going anywhere. He hasn't been going anywhere. So I think that makes it different. But I mean, now is the time where it's like, it's on Notre Dame's dime. It's, it's pretty planned out for you. So
yeah,
if he's going to, it's either he's going to be there or he's not. But I everything that I know as of today is that he will be there. So, I mean, obviously that could change, but, and that has changed because I believe like with the spring game, right? It was like maybe like the day before you find it. But again, this is like, the plan is different, right? With this. So, yeah. And I guess we'll just see, but, and especially because Grant Brix isn't coming on that. That's official. He definitely isn't coming. And that's something that like Christian reported like a couple weeks ago that like it was said that it was locked in, but then he heard from a source that it was not locked in and it wasn't. So
yeah. And he's not coming. So that makes Styles Prescott pretty important in terms of the class and what it can be. I would have to think Notre Dame, I think they want to come out of this with, commit watch from Styles Prescott, right? We thought he could have popped already and he hasn't. If he gets out of the official visit and it's kind of like the vibes are, I'm going to look around a little bit more, that's going to be pretty concerning, I think, because if you feel like it should have happened or it could have happened, and then he gets to this point, has the official visit, and then he's still kind of like, I don't know, I'm going to go look at some other places. That's going to be concerning for them. But I think going into this visit, I think they got to be feeling like we want to lock this down. How important is Styles Prescott to this class, Jimmy?
I think he's very important. Yeah, and I would agree with you with what you just said in terms of because he took those back-to-back visits right away. It's like there really shouldn't be that much more that he needs to see from Notre Dame in terms of feeling comfortable. Then again, I mean, I always bring up the Billy Schrouth example because, like, I mean, there's numerous times that we're like, oh, he's in the class. No, he's not. And so you could always put it from that perspective. But just in terms of his importance in the class, I think, because you don't know what's going on with Lambert. And the other thing is he's definitely a tackle, in my opinion. I think he's like just a guy who's totally just scratching the surface of the kind of player that he can be. And he's got like a finishing mentality. He's a really good athlete for his size and moves really well. Like you see him move and get to the second level. So he has like left tackle qualities. And he's got the size, right? He's got the size, like he's got the like length of the frame that you want there. So, and I always just think too, when it's like a local guy, it's just always a good thing because very few of the local guys who commit to Notre Dame end up, straying away later on. Right. So that's the kind of thing. If he commits, then it's like he's in the class and that's that. Right. So I think he's a super important guy for Notre Dame in this class. I mean, I personally don't think, like, if they want to say take Prescott and Lambert, I think that's fine, but I don't think they need to. You know, I really don't think they need to. If they got just one of those guys, they're probably fine. Just because I don't think either of them, I think both of them are very good prospects, but not like I mentioned on Power yesterday with Matt. I mean, Emil Wagner is a better prospect to me than both of those guys.
Do you see Lambert as a tackle? Someone's asking. Joe Bro is asking in the chat. Do you think Garby Lambert is a tackle?
Yeah, I definitely see him as a tackle.
Yeah.
I think he could play guard, but I definitely see him as a tackle. There's nothing physically or from like a traits perspective that would suggest that he couldn't play tackle at a really high level. You know, and I know he plays he plays right tackle, but he can easily play left tackle. You know, he has the athleticism to play there. I mean, the one thing with him is I think his ceiling is about as high as probably any of the offensive linemen in the class. But he moves extremely well for his size.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have the mentality of like a killer out there. He doesn't, there's just some inconsistencies with his game. And obviously there's some of it is like, the level of competition he plays against. He's not tested at all in terms of what he's doing in plays in a mostly run focused offense, not tested at all in pass pro, but like, man, the tools are fantastic with him. He's a really good prospect. And I mean, he has a chance to be really, really good. And I think one of these things too is like, I mean, everybody wants a Quentin Nelson, a guy who's just like, I want to take your soul. But just because a guy doesn't have that doesn't mean that he's not a good prospect, you know, but it helps. It definitely helps.
Right.
Yeah.
If they were to miss, let's say they miss on Lambert, let's say they land Prescott, miss on Lambert. Would you be happy with 3 in this class?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go.
Well, I mean, one, I mean, they could, I wouldn't be unhappy with them if it was me and I was trying to, you know, look at like kind of what I wanted. Like, I don't think it's bad to take like Lambert or Bricks, right? If that's your 4th guy in the class, I don't think that's bad. I just don't think it's a necessity, because, you know, there's other positions that are deeper in the class, like how they're approaching edge rusher. Like edge rushers are very deep in this class. Like there's a chance, like, you know, one of the things that's so great about that 2016 defensive end class is like they literally had 5 guys, if you count Jameer Jones, who converted, right, that ended up being like guys who played in the NFL, right? So you can have that all in one class if it's like, you know, the guys are good enough, right? And I think you should kind of approach it from that way in terms of just roster. If you're going to like oversign somewhere at a position, it's like, man, this guy's just good. Like he's good. And I think he's got a chance to play. And if it doesn't work out, whatever, right? Like because of depth or whatever. But I think like you could get in danger on the offensive line in this class of like just taking a guy, you know, not the guys that they're targeting right now, but if they expanded the board and it wasn't like a guy that you're kind of thrilled with, you know, you can end up, that's how you end up with a guy who's just, I mean, he ends up being like 2 years and out of the program, or like being a project who never plays. And I mean, that's just how I view the offensive line class in general for 2024.
Okay. So I think this weekend will go a long way towards finding out where Notre Dame actually is on the offensive line. I think coming out of this weekend, there will be a ton of reporting from Matt, ton of reporting on Christian. We'll kind of know where Notre Dame stands there. So from the offensive line standpoint, this upcoming weekend is going to be very, very big. Moving on to, I think, our boss, Mike Franks, one of his favorite players, Kadrian Young. He is a running back, and I compared him to Frank Gore. Just, whether or not that's correct, I just think that he's that kind of player. I mean, he's a power back, but I also think there's a lot of like a more explosive Tony Jones, I think, is another way to look at it, where I think he's got some nice long speed. And the thing I like about him as a runner, and we talked about it when we kind of profiled him on a couple shows back, is he uses contact as a way to elude defenders. He can see a defender coming and he sees someone coming from the other side. He'll take the hit from one guy and use that to propel himself around another defender. So he's very good at absorbing contact in that way. And he's got good contact balance, which you always want to see at the running back position, especially when, Notre Dame's got some, like Jeremiah Love, right? Jeremiah Love, he doesn't really have that. That's not really his game. He's going to be more of a CJ Pro-size type. I think Jadarian Price has good contact balance, but he's a guy who wants to get out in the open as well, right? Not necessarily looking for contact, looking for the crease, kind of like Dexter Williams in that way, where it's like you're looking for the crease, one cut and go. And I think Kadrian Young's got that. He's got a little bit of estimate to him in that sense. I think he's got a little bit more wiggle there. This is a very important weekend for them, Jamie, with Kadrian Young. And I think it was him who took the UTSA official visit, right? That's who Matt was talking about. Yeah. And it's like, took the visit, right? And it's like, okay, like he's willing to go to places. He's willing to go see opportunities. I would think Notre Dame is like, a really good opportunity for him in his mind, Jamie. Tell me about, what do you think about Kadrian Young and where Notre Dame stands with him?
Well, I know we already did a thing like a couple of weeks back or a few weeks back. Can't remember when it was, but just talking about him and where you watch his film and stuff too. And I agree, like that's like rich man's Tony Jones is kind of like how I had it in my notes with him. I mean, he's a relentless runner, tough to tackle, just physical guy. I mean, I don't think I need to add much more than you said, other than like, I think it's his specific skill set, and you're trying to get a guy who is a compliment to Aeneas Williams, right? And also because Estime is probably going after this year. If he has the kind of year that we all think he's going to have, then that's the kind of guy who can step in and maybe even replace carries as a freshman, right? So, and then if you just kind of look at the backfield and what Notre Dame has too, like, you just want to have these different kind of bodies in there. You want to have these different kind of bodies with different kind of skill sets. And I think he fits that skill set. So, obviously everyone knows that Notre Dame's after two big backs, but he would be the guy that is kind of more the priority, the higher ranked guy. Yeah, I think he's a guy that I think if Notre Dame ends up with him and Aeneas Williams in the class, like that's a really good two-man class there. So
do you like Kadrian Young more than Xavier Robinson?
Yes, I do, but I like Robinson.
I also like Robinson, just to be clear.
He's good. I just think Young is just like kind of like a little bit better in a few different areas, and that's why. And it's not to say that maybe Robinson won't be there, because it's not like overly noticeable. It's not like I just think he's a little bit more physical. Like he has the same kind of like big back with like small guy qualities in terms of footwork and all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit more physical, a little bit more relentless. I think also got a little bit more juice as like not, and I wouldn't say Young is a home run hitter, but he might be a guy who can hit some triples. And I think that Robinson, I'd say it's more of like a doubles guy.
I think Young is more, you can use him more in more situations. Whereas Robinson is just kind of like, hey, it's like late in the game or it's like short yardage or something, and we want to go to him, right? Like I feel like Young, it kind of like Diggs in that like you can always have him in the game. You can always have him in there. With 1st and 10, first quarter, whenever. Third down, you can have him in the game. Like, I don't like, there are times when it's like, why is Xavier Robinson in this situation?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't like that because people get hurt, like you want a guy who can always be in there because people get hurt. And you might need someone who it's like, hey, he's got to be Notre Dame's back for the entire game or whatever. Kind of like, when Procise he would get hurt and it's like Josh Adams, right? Josh Adams was a versatile back, right? So you could always have him in the game. And that's kind of what you want. Like Xavier Robinson to me is more of like, hey, this is your big back guy. This is a guy that we want in this situation. And he's really good in this situation. But can we go like 2 games with him as like our lead back? I don't know. Right. That's the only question that I have. And I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying like projecting. It's easier for me to see Kedron Young in a role where it's like he's the lead back and he's Notre Dame's back. It's easier for me to see him excelling in that situation than Xavier Robinson. That's what I would say to that.
I think that's fair.
Thank you, Jamie, for thinking that's fair. I also think that's fair. All right. Rajon's asking about Bronte Johnson, whether my feelings have changed on him. So let's just talk about him, I guess. I was going to wait till the end because he's a little bit later. He's coming on Sunday, which happens to be my birthday. Happy birthday to me. So he'll be in on Sunday going to, I think, Tuesday, 4 to the 6. And Paul Mankey Jr. will be in on Friday, 2 to 4. So let's talk about Bronte Johnson, Jamie. So I'm not totally sure what Rajon's talking about in terms of are my feelings changed. I think he means whether or not he can be in the class. And if that's the case, they have, because I think there was a time when he wasn't really on the board, at least in terms of like, can Notre Dame take him? That there was a question about that.
I mean, it was definitely not. There's a reason he wasn't like visiting in the spring and stuff.
Right.
Like,
yeah, he was not cleared to be in the class. I think the fact that an official visit has been scheduled, that's pretty indicative that, okay, he's been given the go ahead. Like if he wants to commit to Notre Dame, they can take him. Right. For me, that's a pretty big development, right? Because I did not think that he was going to be an option. When we talked about safeties, we didn't bring him up because I didn't think he was even an option for Notre Dame, and it appears he is now. If they were to take him at safety, I would be very happy with that. I think he's he's got the frame for it. I like the fact, honestly, that he thinks of himself as a receiver. I do, playing the safety position, because that mentality of like, I'm going to go get the ball and I'm a ball hawk, and that really lends itself. It makes me think of like Deke Cooper from back in the day. Speaking of, back in the day players, it's like he came in as a wide receiver at Notre Dame. They moved him into to safety after I think it was 4 games. He started a game the week they moved him to safety. He started against Washington and he had an interception on the first series of the game. Right. It's that kind of thing where it's like you have a receiver, but he's got the size 6'3". He's really skinny, 180. But he's like long, so it's easy to put weight on him, and it's not going to tie him up or anything. He's not going to get too heavy. He's going to be able to carry it well, kind of like Kyle Hamilton, right? Like he gained a lot of weight at Notre Dame, but he didn't really show it because he's so long, right? Like you just always looked like a sleek kind of player, and I think Bronte Johnson can fit into that. So I like that he has that offensive mentality. I think he would be a huge get for this class. Really, really raises the ceiling of what the safety position can be in the 2024 recruiting class. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, and I think what is something that Matt mentioned on Power Hour too, where if you get a Bronte Johnson and then you get like a Marquise Gallegos, it's like, wow, now that's like a great safety duo right there, right? Yeah. Like, and certainly like, if you get Bronte Johnson too, then that also leads into you either take guys and, maybe you shuffle the deck later on with some of the class, or you turn guys down. And turning guys down is not a bad thing if you're doing really well. And I think that's would be the case if they end up with Bronte Johnson. And he's someone that he was at Irish Invasion last year. I've seen him in person. Matt has seen him in person numerous times. He is a long, smooth athlete, a guy who just like chews up ground as a runner. I think he is a better safety prospect than a wide receiver. Like, you know, everybody wants to be a receiver, just like everybody wants to be like a running back rather than a linebacker or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how the mentality of a lot of these guys, but it's like, well, you know, what's the best kind of thing for you? And I think to play defensive back is probably the best thing for him. And I just think he's got a really high ceiling there because of like what you said about he's got that, he tracks the ball really well. So that helps. And I think he's got the kind of range to play deep. Right. So I really like his potential as a safety. And then I guess we can kind of lead that into Paul Menke too, because I think then too, like I like Menke. I like him quite a bit. And I think in terms of like, he's obviously been somebody who's already been on campus, and as you know, Matt mentioned on Power Hour too, like his like interest level in a lot of these schools is like Notre Dame is like a fit for him. It's like Duke and Stanford and all these schools. Right. So that kind of thing, you're always thinking, because this guy, no one is looking at those schools if they aren't looking at big picture. Right. So he's obviously looking at it from that perspective. And I like him as just like a guy who's just got like, he's like a downhill player versus the run, really like a guy who can really like play well against the perimeter. And he's another receiver with good ball skills and stuff too, right? He's a guy who plays receiver on offense. So like, it's weird because I mean, Kennedy Urlacher is technically a safety, but he kind of like fits more of like the sub package, you know, maybe even a linebacker thing. So it's like, I don't think I know. Matt kind of mentioned like he was kind of fits more in that. I don't see Menke in that. Like I think he's more than that than Urlacher. But I don't know. To me, it'll be interesting whether or not how hard they like push for him, and kind of where it's at there. But I think now, obviously that's one thing with Johnson, excuse me, you got to close, right? You got to close. And these other schools want him as a receiver. And if that's what he really, really wants, then that's what he probably do. But if they're able to close there, it just leaves so many other options open for the position.
Yeah. And I kind of see where Matt's coming from in that I can see him playing that in the box guy, like sub package guy. I could see it. The difference is that, to your point, he doesn't have to just be that.
Yes.
Like I could see Menke being what they want Kennedy Urlacher to be, but I could also see him just playing safety outright. Yeah. And that's the difference. And Urlacher has to be that guy. He's not going to be like, I'm a deep half. I'm going to be the deep middle guy.
Exactly. Because I think that like Menke is, I wouldn't call him a single high guy, but I think he's a guy who could split the field. You can split the field with him. Right. And where I haven't seen that with Urlacher. So,
and by the way, Bronte could be a single high guy, and that's why you want, that's why he's so important in the class. But it's, because Matt said right on the thing, we was talking about Gallegos in this situation. He's saying, Marquise Gallegos won't be or shouldn't be, I guess, intimidated to come into this situation with, Urlacher or Menke or, Bronte Johnson and that sort of thing. And that's true, right? But here's the thing about high school players is they are going to be recruited by other schools. And they're going to say like, hey, Notre Dame already has 3 safeties. Notre Dame already has 3, right? So they're going to be selling him on that. And I know it shouldn't matter to him. And I bet in theory it doesn't. I'll bet you in theory, in his own mind, it doesn't. But you're going to keep getting told, like, you're going to be Marquise Gallegos, you're going to be our safety. You're going to be our number 1 guy. And maybe Notre Dame's saying that, but they also have those 3, right? They already have the 3, the buffer. And so I think look, if Bronte Johnson wants to come in, and Paul Mankey wants to come in, I think you got to take him. I do. You can't hope, you can't turn one of them down. It'll probably be Paul Mankey in this situation. Can't turn him down and say, oh, I think that we think we're going to go after Marquise Gallegos, and so therefore we're going to turn some down. I don't think they can do that, but I think that's where it's like you have Urlacher in the class as a safety when we don't know that he's going to actually play that position. It's like it just makes it difficult for me. I think it makes it less likely that you land Marquise Gallegos. And maybe that doesn't even matter because maybe Marquise Gallegos is just my own thing and I like him and I want him to be in the class. And they view these guys as like, hey, to us, if we get Bronte Johnson and Paul Mankey, we kind of view them the same kind of way as Marquise Gallegos. And if that's what they feel, then that's fine. I'm not going to, what am I going to say about that? So.
I could hear you the whole time, by the way, but I
got you.
I just think disconnected and whatever. So whatever. But
you sound good. You sound fantastic.
It's back. So anyways, but yeah, no, my view on safety, especially in college football and all the different offenses that you play today, is, I mean, it sounds stupid to say you want to have multiple Kyle Hamiltons, right. But I just mean in terms of guys who can do it all is what I mean.
Multiple people who can play multiple positions.
Yes, because and that's actually what makes playing three safeties what can make it so dangerous is because you can do so many different things with those guys if you have three of them who can do that, right? Especially, and obviously that would be more sub packagey, but yeah, that's kind of the brilliance of it. And that's partially what Jim Knowles' defense, right? At Oklahoma State and what made it so good. Right. And you just want to have these guys who can, a guy who can play in the box, a guy who can play in the slot, a guy who can play deep, the deep half. If you got a guy who can play single high, and obviously there's not too many guys that can play it at a really, really high level, but if you have multiple guys like that, oh my gosh, it just opens up so much. And so, yeah, I do think that a Bronte, and then if you get to me, that just, I mean, I understand in terms of rankings wise, they're both have good rankings. They're right. 4 stars, right? But it's skill set wise that is the thing that's would be so exciting about having both of those guys.
Yeah. I would. I mean, look, for as far as I know, I check with Matt on Marquise Gallegos, at least once a week, and he tells me look don't. Because he hasn't really been in, he hasn't been kind of in the conversation for a little bit. And he's, in the latest Irish Intel, he wasn't brought up in the safety position. And Christian was just kind of we just feel like things are more clear with these other players, not less so with him. But Mike Gago still has an official visit set up. And so as that gets closer, there'll be more clarity there. Matt assures me, look, Notre Dame's not out or anything. They have they have a good chance to land him just like they did before. It's just that after he visited, there was a lot more conversation surrounding him because he was just there, and now that he hasn't, it's been a little bit longer. Time has passed since he visited. And so he doesn't come up as much, but so he assures me Notre Dame still has a good chance there. And so that makes me feel good. Michael's bringing up Dewan Lane. I would love that as well. Go ahead, Jamie.
Dewan Lane is a stud. I do not understand Marquise Gallegos is his ranking from some places. I do not get it. I mean, did he not maybe he doesn't have a verified 40 or something, and that's kind of the deal is, but I mean, dude, just throw on the film.
Michael says Gallegos has a high floor and Notre Dame needs some safeties ready to play. I mean, he does have a high floor, but I think
he's got a high ceiling too.
He's, to me, he's good. He's really good. I mean, look, and I'm asking Matt about him every week. So, I don't usually do that. And I'm kind of, I mean, I'm partial to safeties, as you know, and I have high standards for it. And so it's just, to me, I just see it. I just see it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm with you.
I don't think he has that like elite upside because he doesn't have that size like Kyle does. And he's not the kind of instinctual playmaker that like Peyton Bowen was.
Yeah.
But he's bigger than Bowen, and he just knows how to play the position. And so he's not like an elite athlete, and that's probably what hurts him. Like I'll bet you he doesn't have those like he doesn't have like the Cam Williams 24-foot long jump or something, He doesn't have that, and that's what will keep you low. But when you watch him play, he knows how to play the position, and he knows how to get to spots quicker than someone who might be faster than him, but isn't as doesn't have the IQ as a football player that he does. Yeah. And that's what makes up for it. And that's what what made up for it with Kyle as well. So
Alohi Gilman.
Alohi Gilman, another good example, right? He just knows how to get to spots quicker. So, all right, Jamie, those are the official visitors from this weekend. So I think so. Okay. So offensive line, running back, and safety are kind of the main groups coming in. I think there's going to be a lot of clarity coming out of it. And so we're gonna be talking about that a lot next week. That you're gonna want to go to irsportsdaily.com because Matt and Christian are going to, and throughout the month, right? They are going to have updates pretty regularly, like daily, hourly, that sort of thing. So you're gonna want to go to irsportsdaily.com and sign up there. Go ahead, James.
I was gonna say, well, this weekend also Irish Invasion is June 4th.
Oh, yeah.
That's there. So Christian will be in town for that. Obviously, Matt is already there. I'll be in town for that. And I mean, we don't have a list right now of all the guys who are going to be there. But last year, if you look at the list of the guys that were there and who weren't committed at the time, right? So like Cam Williams, CJ Carr, Aeneas Williams, Jack Larson, Caleb Beasley, Bronte Johnson. Obviously, there's a bunch of other guys that targets that Notre Dame isn't going to land too, but like that's 4 guys who are committed and 2 other guys that are like high priority targets in the class, right? And that's just over the course of the year. And then like this is it's something where there's going to be guys that are going to be 2025 guys we talk about will be there. So that's something to watch out for.
Do you think Mankey could be on commit watch?
I don't know. I mean, whenever there's somebody who has visited before and then they're back, I'm like, it always could be, but I think, if you listen to us before, Andy Chichi, what a name. If you listen to us before, one, he has all these other officials planned. So that doesn't mean that he might not take them, but he does have all those other ones set. So maybe he wants to take them. And then the other thing is, how hard is Notre Dame going to push for him? Right. So maybe they still want him, but maybe they're like, okay, we don't want to push too hard right now because, there's still a lot of other guys who are visiting that they really, really like. Right. And obviously Johnson is visiting right after him. So it's, he's kind of like the first safety on the list to visit. Obviously if they get him, then it's just like whatever they're rolling and they can just figure it out from there.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder says he can't be a take at this moment. I don't want to say can't. I don't know how they feel.
I don't know. Yeah.
But to his point, if he is a take, he should be on commit watch because, like you said, you have Bronte Johnson coming in, Dewan Lane's coming in, Marquise Gallegos is coming in, Davis Andrews coming in next weekend. Davis Andrews might be a little bit tricky because of the mission, right? So he might not even like they might take him not even as a take for this class. You know what I mean? So like I don't know, like he might be a 26 kid, and so in which case, fine, take him if he's a 26. You know, so I don't know how to view him, but like you have all these safeties coming in, and Urlacher is already on board in terms of numbers. So if he likes it, you might want to get your spot because if you sit around, Johnson could commit, and then one of Gallegos or Lane could want to come in, and Andrews, and then now you're like, oh, maybe it's not even an option for me. So he should be.
I think too, like if I had to guess, and this is, like I said, I don't know this, my guess is that they probably won't push for him.
Well, so here's the thing, Jamie. If
just
that's true,
this weekend, I mean,
but if that's true, why did they have him come in first?
I guess that's a good point too. I don't know. Well, here's the other thing. They also didn't know Bronte Johnson was going to be back on the board.
True
I don't,
and you don't want to cancel
I don't know.
it, right? Yeah, that's also
well,
good.
because you still might need him in the class, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? I think with a lot of the safeties, it's like, who do you prefer right now? Like, like it's a personal preference.
Like maybe O'Leary loves him. We don't know.
Maybe, right? I like him. I mean, he would be on my list. He is not at the top. But if they took him in the class, I think he's a good player. But I just, I don't know. I really don't know how they're going to prioritize it. But I do think it's going to be like one of these things where, my guess is if they really want him, they can get him. So, yeah.
Michael Wu is asking who's the last good Latino play at Notre Dame?
Oh man,
I should know this.
I don't want to.
I'm a quarter Mexican. I should know this.
I don't want to forget anyone.
I don't either. For some reason, like Juan Francisco came into my mind, but that sounds Spanish to me. It doesn't sound Mexican. It sounds Spanish. He sounds. I mean, that's Latin adjacent. I don't know. I mean, Rubio is one. I'm trying to think. It's pretty rare, and I remember thinking like, wow, Gallegos.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a ton of like Latino. I don't think there's a lot of Latinos who've played for Notre Dame in the last like 20 years.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
I'll have to do some research on this. I'll have to look it up. I have to.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Getherall was Hispanic, like maybe his mom or something, because Getherall is not a Mexican name or a Hispanic name, but he kind of looks. I mean, he's from Southern California too, so that's another part. I'd have to look into that. So possibly Getherall, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I can't think of one. Off the top of my head, but this is a good question.
That is a good question. We'll look it up. All right. I think that'll be good, Jamie. I think that'll be good for the show. This is going to be our one show for this week. We've been doing multiple shows a week for a really long time. I've been doing the player interviews. Jamie's on Power Hour as well. So Jamie's on 3 pods. He's also writing. He's doing a bunch of stuff. And so the week was different because of the holiday. Jamie recorded Power Hour yesterday, and we were debating doing a show. But then we thought, you know what? Why don't we just give it one show this week? We'll get all the intel, and we'll do our regular schedule next week once we have all the information on recruits and that sort of thing. We're going to try to get Mentalk to come in and talk about the early enrollees. They're coming in on the 9th, and he just did a profile on all 9 of them. So he's got a lot of info there. So we're going to check that out. So you want to check us out on irishsportsdaily.com on our YouTube channel. hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. And check us out on our pod feeds if you're into the audio form as well. Podcast links are in the description below. So that's where it's at, Jamie. Good show. Had a great time talking about it. And we'll be back next week talking recruiting and everything. Have a good weekend, everybody.